I'm going to give the people what they want. Sensation, horror, shock.
The fact that we think of Vincent Price as a horror actor at all, which we certainly do, is an indication of how comfortably and successfully the actor took to the genre, and how much he enjoyed being that character in the public's eyes, because for the first 15 years of his long career, there's little indication that that would be his lasting legacy. 1939's Tower of London, Price's third film, is sometimes cited as his first horror, but despite some scenes of torture and the presence of Boris Karloff, that's really more of a period drama, making Price's genre debut the following year's The Invisible Man Returns, playing the title role in one of Universal's classic franchises.
Power for good, if you're so inclined. Or should you feel perverse, for evil?
While not quite up to the standard of the sublime original, this is one of Universal's better late sequels. It's classy, it's scary, it has the impressive effects of John P. Fulton, and while Price is only seen briefly at the end, the role has one element that would become his stock in trade.
Can a ghost sneeze?
It's cold in the other world, so cold.
Years later, Price would say, to be a villain in horror movies, you have to walk a tightrope between horror and humour. In film history, no one has walked that tightrope as adeptly as Vincent Price, right from this early outing. That said, his best appearance as the Invisible Man would come 8 years later in a brief cameo at the end of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
There's nobody to frighten us anymore.
Oh, that's too bad. I was hoping to get in on the excitement.
Who said that?
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm the Invisible Man.
Despite some promising titles like Green Hell, a jungle adventure directed by Frankenstein's James Whale, of which Price would later say, about 5 of the worst pictures ever made were in that one picture, it would not be until 1953 that Price made another genuine horror. A remake of 1933's Mystery of the Wax Museum, starring Lionel Atwill and Fay Wray and shot in 2-colour Technicolor, House of Wax starred Price as Professor Henry Jarrod and was shot in 3D. The effect was lost on director André de Toth, who was blind in one eye, and some, including Price, have suggested that the film is as good as it is because de Toth couldn't see what the fuss was about and so just made a good thriller. Without all the tedious throwing stuff at the screen.
Well, there's someone with a bag of popcorn.
For the most part. The film also features an early role for Charles Bronson, still going by Charles Bakinski, and, almost unrecognisable, the Addams Family's Carolyn Jones.
That's to be expected.
Price's Jarrod is an artist whose face has been burned, leaving him disfigured and insane.
That look of horror spoils your lovely face. What if it should show even through the wax?
Price's own passion for art, a subject he had studied at London's Courtauld Institute before turning to the stage, is well documented.
Vincent Price's egg magic.
And it's interesting how many artists he did play, usually insane ones. But what really stands out is how much Price hit the ground running, not just as a horror actor, but in that character which he would make his own.
Oh, Millie!
Smelling salts, ladies, help yourself.
Tongue-in-cheek, but not in a way that undermines the horror. Walking the tightrope. With a plot somewhere between Chaney's Phantom and Carry On Screaming, House of Wax remains a hugely enjoyable watch, and a taste of what was to come for the actor. Despite the success of House of Wax, it would be another 5 years before Price returned to horror, this time for keeps.
You must see it with your own eyes to believe it. When the fly comes your way.
1958's The Fly saw Price in a supporting role, moving up to top billing for the following year's sequel.
Not because I'm won over, or have any hope that you'll succeed where Andre failed, but to protect you, if I can, from the deadly consequences of building this device.
One of 4 horror films the actor would make in 1959, including 2 with director-producer William Castle.
A scream at the right time may save your life.
Whom Price would describe as one of the last great characters in the movies. According to Price's daughter, Castle ran into the actor in a coffee shop and there and then pitched him House on Haunted Hill, which they followed up with The Tingler. Featuring perhaps the most outrageously ridiculous premise ever to be taken seriously by its protagonists.
Hear me out, Dave. The Tingler exists in every human being we now know.
Enhanced with a bit of Castle's trademark showmanship.
At any time you are conscious of a tingling sensation, you may obtain immediate relief by screaming.
By putting electrical buzzers under some of the seats in larger theatres, Castle guaranteed a reaction, bringing the movie's premise into the theatre itself.
Please do not panic, but scream! Scream for your lives! The Tingler is loose in this theater, and if you don't scream, it may kill you.
But what really sells the gimmick of Percepto, as Castle dubbed it, is Price's performance.
There's a force in all of us that science knows nothing about, the force of fear.
Adding gravitas enough to sell the terror, but always with a knowing wink.
The walls. The walls.
It's another tightrope performance. Take it too seriously, and we won't, because it's silly. But if the actor treats it as silly, then the film loses the audience.
My God, she's alive.
Which, amazingly, the Tingler never does. It's stupidly entertaining. If The Flies and the Castle films had given the public a taste of Price as a horror star, then the Edgar Allan Poe films of Roger Corman solidified that image. But, crucially, also gave him variety within the genre. From the psychological horror of The Fall of the House of Usher,
What is the meaning of this?
through the grand gothic of Pit and the Pendulum, to the comedy of The Raven. In 7 films, we get 7 different faces of Price. 9, in fact, because he plays 3 roles in Tales of Terror. And actually, if you start to look at the flashbacks as well, then 10, 11, there's a lot. The Poe cycle deserves a documentary all of its own. You can check out ours here.
Look at them all scrambling like starving men for crusts of bread.
Price was now typed as a horror star, but the Poe cycle proved that that would not stop him from displaying his range as an actor. And horror did not just give him new opportunities, it also gave him a new, young audience, as these films were overwhelmingly marketed at teens. Horror expert Kim Newman has pointed out that Price was a teenager's idea of a grown-up, so the films are not just good versus evil, but a generational battle.
No, Roderick. No, I will not listen. I've been here long enough. Now, please let me go.
This is most evident in The Fall of the House of Usher, which can be interpreted as Price's stuffy older brother stopping his younger sister from running off with her slick-haired boyfriend by burying her alive. It's a hell of a metaphor. In the mid-50s, Price's career had been struggling as he entered middle age, forcing him to rely on TV and smaller roles. Horror changed that, and it's probably not an exaggeration to say that it saved his career.
Why don't you laugh at me now?
The Poe films and Corman's remake of Tower of London starring Price had all been produced by American International Pictures, or AIP. And over the next 15 years, Price would make 26 films, either distributed or produced by the company, including some classics higher up on this list.
We must show these people that we have no fear.
After Corman moved on from Poe, AIP continued the series, mostly under director Gordon Hessler, and Price starred in a few of these films as well, including The Oblong Box.
It means that my brother was buried alive.
He also narrated Spirits of the Dead, an anthology of 3 Poe stories directed by European art house directors Federico Fellini, Louis Malle, and Roger Vadim. These anthologies have been popularised by Corman's Tales of Terror, and now other companies got in on the act, with films like Twice Told Tales, starring Price, but based on the stories of Nathaniel Hawthorne.
The rain is stopping.
I suppose you're going to blame that on me, too.
Also worth mentioning is Comedy of Terrors, neither Poe nor anthology, but clearly influenced by the cycle in its casting. Price's final AIP film was the valedictory Madhouse, in which he plays an aging horror star.
Well, my friends, you've just seen the 5th Dr. Death epic, in which I play many parts, all brilliantly, of course.
Haunted by memories of his movies and fearing that those horrors are spilling out into real life. Incorporating clips from Price's earlier AIP films. While not a great film, Madhouse benefits from the casting of Price's friend Peter Cushing.
In our day in Hollywood, the monsters didn't need makeup.
And from the personal nature of its premise, allowing Price an almost elegiac farewell to AIP.
Because I made them scream.
Influenced by the Poe films in a different way is The Last Man on Earth, based on the book I Am Legend by Richard Matheson, who scripted 4 of the Poes. Matheson worked on the screenplay but was unhappy with the result, and so went by the pseudonym Logan Swanson. His dissatisfaction at least partly because Fritz Lang had been touted as director, and the film ended up being shot in Italy by Sidney Salco. Matheson also felt Price to have been miscast, and perhaps he was right, but there's no denying the integrity of the performance the actor gives. Particularly in the early scenes, largely silent, balancing grim monotony with the violent struggle for survival and the constant presence of death. Despite Matheson's misgivings and some occasional clunkiness in editing and direction, The Last Man on Earth has scenes of genuine tension and horror. It also retains the grey areas of Matheson's novel and his cynicism about mankind, largely excised from later adaptations. It wasn't just Price who rode the wave of interest in classic horror through Middle Age and onwards. The Venn diagram of horror stars appearing together in films of varying quality through the 60s, 70s and 80s is an overlapping and complex one. Mention should be made of Scream and Scream Again. Bad enough that we reviewed it for our regular Bad Movie strand, but notable for featuring Price alongside Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, although they remain almost completely separate. But the centre of this Venn diagram is 1983's House of Long Shadows, featuring Lee, Cushing, John Carradine,
What are you doing here?
And Vincent Price, who gets easily the best introduction.
I have returned.
The 7th cinematic adaptation of the novel 7 Keys to Baldpate, House of Long Shadows is nowhere near as good as an old dark house movie with this cast deserves to be. But how can anyone resist seeing these men together? Price, as ever, relishes his moments.
Please don't interrupt me whilst I am soliloquizing.
And the idea that these great old horror stars are all one horrifying family makes it at least worth a look.
The final destined meeting, wouldn't you say, brother?
Oh dear.
Particularly with the knowledge that they did all genuinely get along. To this point, our top 10 has been more dictated by chronology than quality, but now we're into a genuine top 3, and we're backtracking to 1971's The Abominable Dr. Phibes. Cushing was originally to have co-starred here too, but his wife's failing health prevented it, so Joseph Cotten was cast instead, opposite Price in the title role. If Price has a defining role, then Phibes is it. The vengeful organist and biblical scholar, killing off those he holds responsible for the death of his wife, modelling his vengeance on the plagues of ancient Egypt. Up to a point.
A brass unicorn has been catapulted across a London street and impaled an eminent surgeon.
His face held virtually immobile by the makeup, speaking through a phonograph to a picture of Caroline Munro, Price still manages to make Phibes a figure both of terror and sympathy, and also comedy. Only Vincent Price could drain Terry Thomas of blood, then pass judgment on his taste in art. Price and Cotten were old friends, and filming proved almost too happy an experience, as Price's habit of giggling kept cracking his makeup. The film was an unexpected success and remains a cult favourite today, balancing grisly gothic with camp excess, both embodied in Price's performance. A sequel was hastily produced. Price remains as watchable as ever, but an over-reliance on voiceover destroys some of the character's mystique.
In Egypt I shall find the key to the elixir of life.
While the lack of a strong revenge motive makes Phibes a simple killer. Inasmuch as you can use the word simple about Dr. Anton Phibes. Price fans can probably be divided into those who prefer Phibes and those who prefer the actor's other great ironic revenge horror, Theatre of Blood. I fall into the latter camp, but it's an amicable split. We can all agree they're both great.
It's a grave tale, Snipe.
This time, Price plays ageing Shakespearean actor Edward Lionheart, killing off critics who have lambasted his performances in appropriately Shakespearean fashion. More light-hearted than Phibes, though no less gory, the film is horror comedy par excellence, boasting a cast of British notables, including Diana Rigg as Lionheart's daughter.
I return those duties back as our right fit.
Director Douglas Hickox said, "The cast was so good that all I had to do as director was open the dressing room door and let the cameras roll." As past films had referenced Price's love of art, Theatre of Blood trades on his reputation as a chef, and also gave the actor the chance to play Shakespeare, something he had always wanted to do.
He was my friend, faithful and just to me.
Diana Rigg later recalled Price's enthusiasm for the role, saying he obviously loved doing it, and that enthusiasm is evident on screen. Price delivering on both comedy,
Hello, I'm Butch,
and terror.
I am going to make you suffer as you've made me suffer.
Of all his tongue-in-cheek horrors, Theatre of Blood best exemplifies that tightrope that Price talked about, and here we see him dancing along it with an effortlessness that makes you forget what a tricky thing that is to pull off.
You see? Lionheart, alive in triumph.
It's a bloody joy of a film.
What have I done?
But our number one pick goes to the purest horror film Price ever made.
I am Matthew Hopkins, Witchfinder.
Witchfinder General was released in the US as The Conqueror Worm, as AIP tried to connect it to the Poe cycle, but this is a very different brand of horror. The film's making was difficult for Price. Director Michael Reeves had wanted Donald Pleasance for the role of Matthew Hopkins and had to rewrite the character substantially for the American star forced upon him. When the two men met, Reeves reportedly said, "I didn't want you and I still don't want you, but I'm stuck with you."
Has he confessed yet?
Even the famously good-natured Price drew the line here, and the relationship deteriorated as Price found Reeves' direction maddeningly vague.
It's a fitting end for the foul ungodliness in womankind.
But perhaps the friction between star and director added to the action, because the resulting film is a horror classic and one of Price's best performances.
You are all of you confessed idolaters.
Here, there is no twinkle in the eye, no levity to soften the brutality. Nor is there even a hint of the supernatural that might dilute the horror of man's inhumanity to man. And Price is a key part of that, wordlessly conveying the insecurities of Hopkins without allowing the character to become even momentarily sympathetic. There is no crack in the facade. It's a performance as relentless as the film itself.
Well, Captain Marshall, do you now confess?
When he saw the finished film, Price wrote to Reeves, praising it, finally able to understand the artistic vision that the young director had been unable or unwilling to impart in words. Today, Witchfinder General is a sad reminder of what might have been, as Reeves died the following year, aged just 25.
All right, Stern.
It remains as powerful and disturbing a horror film as has ever been made, and a testament to the often overlooked versatility of its star.
Don't worry, I'll be back.
From slow beginnings, the genre career of Vincent Price assumed such heights that he has now become synonymous with horror. A cameo in Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands neatly drew a line under a career that had encompassed a classic universal monster, mad science of the 50s, psychological horror of the 60s.
Where is she? It's me!
And into the crueler shades of modern horror. And though he was typecast as a horror star, Vincent Price was never typecast as a horror character. While Boris Karloff will always be Frankenstein's monster and Christopher Lee forever Dracula, Vincent Price was only ever typed as Vincent Price.
I never met a monster I didn't like.
And while that role might have been limiting from time to time, it was one that he obviously relished playing, and one in which we never tired of seeing him.
Everybody dies, rich and poor. Death doesn't discriminate. At least not until now.
Thanks for watching. To see our video about the Corman Poe films starring Price, click here. Do you agree with our top 3? Let us know your thoughts and personal favourites in the comments below.